Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 6 Part 15 based on novel. So let's start. Above the vast electric sea, the black clouds were rolling over and over while numerous thunderbolts rained down from the clouds, covering the heaven and earth in the process. Rumbling thunders were extending downward from the sky till the horizon. Somewhere on the electric sea, the atmosphere seemed to freeze momentarily. Two astonish-filled gazes were focused suspiciously on figure sitting on the head of the green dragon. For a moment, their brains seemed to be somewhat blurry. Ching Xi did not speak further. Instead, he lowered his head and smiled gently while looking in the direction of Lindong and little Martin. Under his gaze, Lindong finally returned to his senses. A complicated look was on his face as he stared at Ching Xi. He then muttered, "How can it be?" It was indeed impossible. Ching Xi was definitely someone from the ancient times. No one knew how long had he been alive. In fact, not even the bones of the practitioners from that timeline would have remained till today. How could it be possible that someone from that time would still be alive? It's impossible for ordinary individuals to live so long. However, it's a different story for those super practitioners that have transcended beyond life and death. Little Martin slowly explained as it finally came to its senses. However, that kind of level is considered extremely rare even in the ancient times. Transcended beyond life and death. Lindong shuddered at this thought. That idea of such level was completely foreign to him. Could the black-eyed old man whom he met previously at the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet be of such level when he was at his peak? It seemed that this green dragon Ching Xi was indeed mysterious. According to what I know of, there was a calamity in the heaven and earth during the ancient times. During that period, many elite practitioners died. Little Martin sighed deeply. A calamity? Lindong was startled. For some reasons, he suddenly remembered a vision of the ancient times from one of the body remains in the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Those dark and evil unknown entities and even the black-eyed old man, who possessed the devouring ancestral symbol, were difficult to deal with. Could it be that there was some connection between these two events? It seems that the celestial demon Martin tribe's inherited memories are not completely shattered. You still remember the ancient calamity. Ching Xi chuckled at this moment. However, Lindong discovered that this mysterious individual's eyes were somewhat solemn when the word calamity was mentioned. Clearly, the calamity seemed to be an unforgettable event for him. As Lindong thought of this, he secretly trembled with fear. Was the so-claimed calamity so terrifying that even an exceptional practitioner like Ching Xi would be so fearful of it? During that time, it was due to pure luck that I am able to survive. Of course, my powers at that time were not considered top-notch in the heavens. It's only after that period of time that I am able to achieve some accomplishments. If not, I'm afraid it will not be that easy to survive through that calamity. Ching Xi laughed plainly. Then, he came back from reminiscing the memories of the ancient times and stared at Lindong and said, "You're quite ambitious to want my inheritance. However, I hope that you have the required talent to complement your ambition." Lindong's eyes slightly froze. Without saying anything else, he cupped his hands together towards Ching Xi. Upon seeing this, Ching Xi raised his eyebrows. Then, he slipped out his palms from his green robe. A lustrous green glow was spiraling around his fingers. Ching Xi pointed his finger outward before a beam of green light poured out boundlessly and formed a mini-sized green dragon in the mid-air. The scales on the green dragon were sparkling. Through that display of might, even Lindong could feel an aura of danger. The inheritance that I'm about to give you is contained within it. Whether you can obtain it or not, shall depend on your own abilities. Ching Xi stood up from his green dragon's head and waved the sleeves of his robe lightly. Immediately, the mini-green dragon roared towards the sky. As it roared, the black clouds in the sky began to churn and roll frantically while numerous lightning bolts began to fall from the sky repeatedly. Boom! The entire sky was filled with thunderbolts and the scales on the body of the mini-green dragon became increasingly dazzling. At that moment, with a swipe of its dragon tail, the thunderbolts in the sky exploded. As the thunderbolts exploded, the green dragon transformed into a beam of green light. Accompanied with a destructive shock wave, it blasted towards Lindong with a lightning speed. Before the green light even reached the surface of the sea, a huge indentation that was a few hundred feet deep was already being created on the electric sea, where Lindong was standing on. The green light was imprinted on Lindong's eye pupils. His face was becoming increasingly solemn as well. He could sense the terrifying energy that the beam of green light contained. If he was to be hit by it, even if he had a resolute will to live, he would die on the spot. However, at this point in time, it was clearly not possible to retreat. If he wanted the inheritance, he must obtain Ching Xi's recognition. Apparently, this incoming attack was Ching Xi's test. If he could not withstand the beam of green light, he could only obediently accept the green dragon whole's inheritance. Given Ching Xi's haughtiness, he would not be satisfied to give his inheritance to a mediocre individual. At this moment, surging yuan power, mental energy and devouring power were all activated and channeled frantically by Lindong into the ancient universe formation about his dantian. 5 black-colored light pillars shot out from Lindong's body and blasted towards the sky. The black clouds in the sky were being ripped apart and the thunderbolts within the clouds were disintegrated by the light pillars. This energy. Ching Xi examined the light pillars that were shot out from Lindong's body with a surprised look on his face. It's actually fusion force. Yuan power, mental energy. And devouring power? Devouring ancestral symbol. The astonishment in Ching Xi's eyes was getting more and more obvious. At the same time, the strength of his vision was rather vicious. With a single look, he was able to identify which 3 types of energy was Lindong's fusion force made up of. I didn't expect the devouring ancestral symbol to end up in your hands. Did the black-eyed fellow die as well? Ching Xi muttered as his eyes darkened. Great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand. 5 grayish-black light pillars shot up into the sky and materialized into 5 grayish-black ancient huge fingers. Then, the huge fingers lined up together and formed a grayish-black huge hand that seemed to come from the ancient times. After the big hand was formed, the nothingness that followed the formation of the big hand exploded. The faintly discernible shadow that was of heaven and earth appeared once again. Great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand. This was the most powerful martial art that Lindong could use. And right now, the energy that was fueling this martial art was his most powerful energy, the fusion force. In other words, this move was his most powerful weapon. Great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand. The martial art of Great Desolate Emperor. Such an unpredictable fellow. Ching Xi gazed at the shadow in void with a complicated look in his eyes. Break. The yuan power in Lindong's eyes were almost coagulating into solid substance and squirting out of his eyes. His whole body was filled with battle fervor. He held up his head undauntedly and looked at the incoming beam of green light. Then, without any fear, he took a step forward and clenched his fist. The enormous grayish-black hand in the sky then came whizzing downward as well. Boom boom. There were continuous rumbling sounds above the electric sea. It was as if the entire sea was being lifted up by the huge hand. Under the observations of the 3 persons at the scene, the huge hand whizzed downward and collided ferociously with that beam of green light. When the collision took place, it seemed that even the dimension of space was trembling. A few hundred feet tall tidal wave, which was made up of the electric liquids, was swept up. This huge wave knocked Lindong, who was standing closest to the point of contact, a few hundred meters backward. Luckily, he was able to adapt to the electric liquids after going through half a month's training. Even though Lindong was knocked back, his gaze was still fixed tightly onto the collision. Then, he heard a light snapping sound. Soon after, he squinted his eyes and a look of ecstasy extended throughout his face. That was because the martial art that ruptured was that boundless beam of green light. Going all out on his most powerful martial art, Lindong clearly obtained the ultimate victory. The rupture of the green light was extremely quick and violent. Within seconds, it was completely disintegrated and a faint green-colored rainbow whizzed out of the explosion. Finally, it shot towards Lindong from afar and went through his body. Green glow engulfed Lindong's body. However, he did not seem to suffer any injuries. At the moment when he was being struck by the green-colored rainbow, he could feel that a series of boundless information frantically surging into his brain. Lin Dong spread open his arms and let the green light wreak havoc in his body. Meanwhile, he closed his eyes and continued to take in the huge amount of information that was surging into his brain. Finally, the information that was surging frantically into his brain came together and formed 5 dark green-colored, ancient words. Green heaven materialized dragon skill. The ancient words were majestic and sublime. Indistinctly, there seemed to be an indescribable imposing aura seeping out of the words. This was the inheritance from Ching Xi. Green glow flowed over the electric sea. A figure was suspended in front of the green glow. Thunderbolt continuously descended from the dark clouds all over the sky. However, a thunderbolt void was actually formed 100 feet around this figure. That scene was as though the thunderbolt did not dare to approach him. Ching Xi placed both of his hands behind his back. His eyes were focused on the figure within the green light. A warm and stylish smile surfaced on his face. There was a pleased expression within that smile. That previous attack was an attack that even someone who had experienced 2 Nirvana tribulation could not handle. However, Lin Dong was actually able to forcefully receive it with just the strength of a 1 yuan Nirvana stage. Hence, he performed pretty well. It has really been many years since I have seen the devouring ancestral symbol. Ching Xi sighed softly and muttered somewhat emotionally. Little Martin watched Lin Dong, who was being wrapped by the green light, from the surface of the sea. However, it did not worry. Instead, it turned its eyes towards Ching Xi and said, "I never expected you to be so generous." With little Martin's eyesight, it was naturally able to tell just how powerful this inheritance that Ching Xi gave to Lin Dong was. Looks like the heavenly demon Martin tribe has been quite completely preserved. That ancestor of yours does indeed possess quite a great tactic. He is actually able to preserve the tribe during that time. Ching Xi stared at little Martin, smiled faintly and said. Little Martin's mischievous smile was gradually withdrawn when he heard this. Instead, there was some additional solemnness in it. Being a member of the heavenly demon Martin tribe, he naturally clearly understood just what the ancestor that Ching Xi had mentioned from his mouth represented. Just what happened back then? Little Martin hesitated for a moment before it finally asked, after being unable to hold back any longer. Although little Martin possessed some inherited memory, it was nonetheless an extremely shallow one. The only thing that it knew was that the experts in this world had been completely swept away by a catastrophe during the ancient times. Countless number of top experts had died during that catastrophe. Ching Xi curled his lips. His mouth moved, but eventually he did not say anything. All he did was shake his head and said, "You might come to know about it in the future, but now is not the time." Little Martin knitted his brows slightly. He could tell that this Ching Xi seemed to be extremely afraid of that so-called catastrophe. This discovery caused even the usually fearless little Martin to feel its heart tighten a little. The strength of this Ching Xi was definitely even stronger than it was at its peak. However, even such a person was actually so afraid of the ancient catastrophe. Just how terrifying was that catastrophe? Did this world really possess something that had the shockingly great ability to destroy 9 out of 10 of those experts from the ancient era? Roar? While little Martin was feeling shaken by this in his heart, a low and deep roar was suddenly emitted from with the green light. That voice was emitted from Lin Dong. However, there was a faint and unique ripple within it. Little Martin's eyes looked over. One could see that Lin Dong's body actually wiggled slightly. It was as though something was trying to tunnel out of his body. However, it appeared that something was missing and it was ultimately unable to complete that step. If one wished to master this green heaven materialized dragon skill, the heavenly dragon aura is something that one must possess. Otherwise, it is not possible to even begin practicing it. Ching Xi laughed when he saw Lin Dong repeatedly struggling in the green light. Heavenly dragon aura? Would that not mean that the inheritance that you give him is useless? Little Martin frowned and said. The heavenly dragon aura is something that was only possessed by those fellows with genuine dragon bloodline. It was not an easy matter to obtain it. Ching Xi smiled. He waved his sleeves and the enormous green dragon under his feet immediately whizzed forward. After which, it transformed into a deep green-colored light ray and rushed forward. This deep green-colored light ray jolted through the mid-air. There was a faint powerful ripple spreading from it. Heavenly Dragon Aura. Little Martin only slowly nodded after sensing the ripple that he was familiar with. The deep green-colored ray of light rushed through the sky and directly charged into Lindong's body. Immediately, the green light scintillated and actually began to wiggle wildly on the surface of Lindong's body. Low roars that were filled with bitterness was being continuously emitted from within it. The Heavenly Dragon Aura is the fundamental part of training by the Dragon Tribe. It is not easy for an ordinary human body to accept it. However, I have already provided everything that is needed. Whether you will be able to subdue this rare Heavenly Dragon Aura will depend on your ability. If you are unable to even surmount this obstacle, it is likely that you will have difficulty mastering this green heaven materialized dragon skill. Ching Xi looked at Lindong, who was roaring under the green light, and calmly said. Little Martin did not comment much when it heard this. The Heavenly Dragon Aura was considered as a great treasure to many experts. If one was able to refine it, it would be extremely helpful in strengthening one's body. Similarly, however, this was something that belonged to the dragon tribe. If a human, who was comparatively weaker than that of a dragon, wanted to absorb it, that human must undertake quite a great deal of risk. Nevertheless, little Martin had strong confidence towards Lindong, and the latter was even able to subdue the devouring ancestral symbol. Although this Heavenly Dragon Aura was powerful, it was a little difficult to get Lindong to fail. Roar? The figure that was being wrapped under the green light was struggling increasingly intensely in front of the eyes of little Martin and Ching Xi. Numerous wild and violent ripple also continuously spread from it. Boom boom boom. Amidst the roaring, the human figure within the green light also suddenly swung his hand and smashed it forward. Terrifying wind swept over and directly smashed the electric sea below, forming many enormous pits in the process. However, following the crazy unleashment of this wild and violent force, the bitter pain within Lindong's voice also gradually weakened. The Heavenly Dragon Aura might be incomparably uncontrolled and violent, but Lindong was also not someone an ordinary expert could compare with. After having experienced some pain, he had begun to show signs of vaguely getting used to it. After all, Lindong had already gotten used to that pain within this half a year in the electric sea. As Lindong gradually got used to the roaring Heavenly Dragon Aura within his body, a green glow also began to wiggle wildly on his surface. After which, it actually emitted a scaly-like layer on his body. He has gradually formed some green dragon skin here. Ching Xi smiled and nodded slightly upon seeing this scene. Roar? Another roar was being emitted from the green light. However, there was not the least bit of pain within it this time around. Instead, it appeared exceptionally loud and clear. The figure within the green light shook and rushed out from the permeating green light. After which, that figure suspended steadily in the midair. That figure naturally belonged to Lindong. At this moment, his entire body was filled with the green glow. These green glow had gathered outside of his skin, appearing to have formed a special skin layer. Moreover, this skin layer appeared to faintly form into the shape of a dragon. Lindong lowered his head and observed his body with some interest. He clenched his fist and was able to sense the frightening energy that was surging and whistling through his body. The current him was undoubtedly much stronger than his previous self. What a powerful martial arts! Lindong widened and shut his mouth. A glint flickered in his eyes. From a certain point of view, this green heaven materialized dragon skill was similar to the devil ape transformation that he had practiced in the past. However, the gap between the two was just the cloud and mud. Based on the information which he had obtained, if one was to master this green heaven materialized dragon skill, one's strength would basically become as perfect as those from the dragon tribe. Everyone knew that the dragon tribe was the strongest species amongst demonic beasts. By allowing a human to reach such a frightening stage, this martial arts itself was sufficient to shake the world. The current Lindong had only just gained a rough understanding of it. Yet, his strength was already many times stronger than it was in the past. The layer of green glow membrane on the surface of his skin might appear weak. However, its defensive strength was likely even more powerful than his current Nirvana golden body. Just by being able to practice and form the green dragon skin so swiftly, your training talent is considered quite good. Ching Xi looked at the excited-looking Lin Dong and chuckled. Thank you very much, Elder. Lin Dong withdrew the smile on his face and gave Ching Xi a respectful bow from a younger generation. He clearly understood just how generous the gift from Ching Xi was. Since you are able to see this remnant shadow of mine, we have some affinity. Ching Xi waved his hand and sighed in a manner that suggested there was a deeper meaning behind his words. Moreover, it is ultimately good for there to be an additional expert in this world. Lin Dong was momentarily stunned. Clearly, he did not understand the meaning behind Ching Xi's words. You will understand it in the future. By being in possession of the devouring ancestral symbol, perhaps you might not be able to hide from it in the future even if you wished to. Ching Xi laughed. He appeared to have also seen through Lin Dong's uncertainty. All right, I have already given you the inheritance. The task given to this remnant shadow of mine is completed. Perhaps it's time for it to vanish from this world. Ching Xi's voice had just sounded when Lin Dong discovered that the former's body had gradually begun to turn illusionary. The electric sea will also disappear after I disappear. There is a pill river left by me in this green dragon hall. Consider it the last gift that I will give you. Ching Xi's figure became increasingly pale. Finally, it completely vanished in front of Lin Dong's eyes. Lin Dong, we will meet again in the future. Hopefully, you will not disappoint me at that time. My inheritance is not meant to be left to a mediocre person. A final soft laughter slowly reverberated over this electric sea following the disappearance of Ching Xi's figure. Ching Xi's figure finally disappeared completely from the electric sea. The imposing aura that was pervading through the air weakened gradually as well. Lin Dong looked at the spot where Ching Xi's figure had disappeared and smacked his lips involuntarily. Apparently, he did not expect to have such a lucky encounter in this place. Even though he was still unclear about Ching Xi's origin and identity, he knew that the latter must be an extraordinary individual. Such individual was definitely a first-class existence in the entire universe. This fellow is quite powerful, little Martin stated as it used its claws to scratch its hairy face. Lin Dong smiled. To be able to survive from the ancient times until now was indeed a scary feat. Perhaps this Ching Xi was the legitimate old demon. However, this fellow is rather generous. With regards to this matter, Lin Dong completely agreed with little Martin as well. Even though he still could not fully comprehend the green heaven materialized dragon skill that Ching Xi had given him, he could indistinctly sense the boundless potential of this martial art. If he could master it, its might would be considerably terrifying. The green heaven materialized dragon skill was not like the great desolate imprisoning heavenly finger in the way that it was not solely an offensive martial art. From a different perspective, it could be considered as an extremely profound body transformation martial art. If he could master it, his entire physical body would become much more powerful. By then, every movement that he made would bring about devastating killing power. One of his fists or fingers would be comparable to a martial art. Naturally, Lin Dong clearly had not reached that level yet currently. Even if he relied on the heavenly dragon aura that Ching Xi had given him, he would barely make it past the first step. However, even if that was the case, he could already feel the benefits that the green heaven materialized dragon skill brought about. Just the green dragon skin alone had already strengthened his physical body significantly. Furthermore, Lin Dong had not fully absorbed the heavenly dragon aura. Currently, even if he had the devouring ancestral symbol, it was clear he could not refine this powerful heavenly dragon aura. The heavenly dragon aura will stay in his body and gradually fuse completely with his body as his powers became increasingly stronger. And when the heavenly dragon aura fused perfectly with Lin Dong, his physical body would be as abnormally powerful as those demonic beasts. Just as Lin Dong was overjoyed at the reward he reaped this time around, an enormous disturbance finally occurred at the boundless electric sea. The surrounding space started to get distorted and the rolling thunderous clouds in the sky were dissipating rapidly with an observable speed. Is it going to disappear soon? Upon seeing what was going on, Lin Dong muttered to himself softly. Just like what Ching Xi had said, the green dragon test would gradually disappear after he disappeared. The distortion of space was getting increasingly violent. Eventually, it was like a piece of shattered glass, crumbling completely with a snapping sound. As the electric sea collapsed, the surrounding space became formless and chaotic once again. From afar, it seemed as if the dusky space was filled with nothing but stillness. Crash! Lindorm was suspended in this space of nothingness, and he looked ahead of him with squinted eyes. There appeared to be a crisp sound of water flowing coming through that direction. Indistinctly, boundless and surging nirvana chi was blasting towards him like a volcano eruption. After being blasted by the boundless nirvana chi, the dusky color of the surrounding was being dulled rapidly. Then, 1,000 feet long, enormous and resplendent river appeared dazzlingly before Lindorm's eyes. The river was bright red in color, and the water in the river was rather thick and sticky. On the surface of the river, there were scarlet flames as well. That was the nirvana flames, which was formed when the robustness of the nirvana chi had reached a certain level. Apparently, this river was a pill river. From the look of it, its quality was undoubtedly a lot better than the one Lindorm saw outside. Lindorm was looking at the resplendent pill river with slight envy. It would take a terrifying huge amount of nirvana pills to make such a high-quality pill river. This Ching Xi was indeed generous. This is a good place. Hey, it appears that Ching Xi also did me a favor too. Little Martin looked at the pill river that was flowing through the space of nothingness while nodding its head satisfyingly. Right now, Little Martin already had the samsara pill. However, if it wanted to form its physical body, it would still need an extremely huge amount of energy to support the process. The pill river before its eyes seemed to absolve its desperate need. Lindorm smiled while nodding his head. If Little Martin could recover its physical body, even if it could not return to its peak form in a short while, it would still be much more powerful than what it was now. By then, Little Martin would be a great help to him. It will take quite a bit of time for me to form my physical body. It's okay. It just so happens that I need to train here as well and try to break through the second Nirvana tribulation, Lindorm chuckled. His journey in ancient treasure trove was coming to an end. Right now, he was in no hurry to go outside. After all, he could not find such a perfect training ground while he was outside. Currently, everyone was hunting for the treasures scattered across the ancient battlefield. All the practitioners were trying their best to increase their strength in preparation for the 100 Empire War, which would be arriving in less than half a year's time. To vie for the treasures, the fights that broke out across the land were extremely intense as well. Right now, more than half of the ancient battlefield were in chaos. Lindorm would rather train peacefully in this place than being out there. Upon hearing what was said, Little Martin nodded its head. Soon after, its eye became gradually solemn. With a leap, it appeared in the middle of the pill river. Then, with swipe of its claw, the black and white mysterious pill appeared on its claw. Traces of samsara chi were emitting from the pill. When the surrounding nirvana chi came into contact with the samsara chi, the former dissipated immediately. Clearly, these two energies were not of the same level. Little Martin stared emotionally at the pill on its claw. After a slight moment of hesitation, it stuffed the pill directly into its mouth. Bang! When the samsara pill entered its mouth, a terrifying wave of energy gushed out from Little Martin's body abruptly and swept up perilous torrents in the pill river. Traces of the black and white samsara chi were seeping out from Little Martin's body and extended outward gradually. Finally, they formed a black and white energy cocoon that engulfed Little Martin's body entirely. Lindorm looked at the black and white cocoon that was hovering in the pill river. Indistinctly, he could sense the frantic energy waves that were emitting from the cocoon. Clearly, the inside of the cocoon was not as peaceful as it seemed on the outside. Apparently, the formation of a physical body was not an easy task and came along with significant risk as well. However, with regards to this issue, there was nothing much that Lindorm could do about it. This matter depended only on Little Martin, and Lindorm could not interfere. Hence, the only thing that he could do was to pray at one side for Little Martin to complete this task successfully. Seems like it's my turn now. After staring at the black and white cocoon for nearly half an hour and realizing that there was nothing much he could do to interfere, Lindorm finally gave up. Then, he took in a deep breath of air. With a jolt of his body, he landed on the only training platform on the Pill River. He was not little Martin and he could not directly absorb such thick nirvana chi. Therefore, he needed the training platform to filter the nirvana chi. Luckily, he possessed the devouring ancestral symbol and his absorption speed of the nirvana chi would not be too slow. The second nirvana tribulation. As Lin Dong sat on the training platform, his eyes were filled with eagerness. After this half a month of training in the electric sea and with the newly formed green dragon skin, his physical body was far more superior than even the bodies of those practitioners who had passed through the second nirvana tribulation. Thus, he was rather confident in passing through the nirvana tribulation. As Lin Dong closed his eyes and prepared to enter the training mental state, a thought flashed across his mind. I wonder how Little Flame is doing now. This place was a battlefield that was reeking of blood. Numerous blood-reeking figures flew back and forth within this battlefield. The sound of fightings and killings resounded through the battlefield while devastation pervaded the area. These figures were emotionless and their bodies were skinny and dried up like mummified corpses. Their eyes filled with killer intent and were blood-red in color. This place was just like hell. Bang bang. Deep and low voices came through the devastated battlefield. More than 10 figures exploded after being struck by the shadow of a rod. Then, an extremely dreadful aura of brutality swept across the battlefield like an ancient demonic beast. As the aura of brutality swept across the place, a muscular, giant-like figure walked out of the mountain of corpses and sea of blood with a heavy footstep while dragging along an enormous black-colored metal rod by his side. At this moment, the figure's seemingly dull face became azure-like, which was filled with malevolence and viciousness. Upon facing such malevolence, even the surrounding blood-eyed and mindless mummified corpses did not dare to go near it. They allowed the figure, whose entire body was covered in blood, to walk through them slowly and all the way till the end of this battlefield. That kind of malevolence could not even be stopped by this devastation-filled and blood-reeking place. This video will end here.